Hey there and welcome to the garage. So I wanted to share a very quick update with you guys. A couple weeks ago I posted a YouTube short all about this, which is my latest project car. It's a 1951 Ford Crestliner, which is a two-door sedan that also gets a beautiful two-tone paint job. This one will be sandpiper tan on the top and Hawaiian bronze metallic down on the bottom. And of course, we're going to bring you a lot more videos about the progress we're making on this thing, so make sure you are subscribed to the AutoEsoterica YouTube channel. But back to that short. In that little feature I was showing you guys, basically, we got the body shell back from the media blasters, and as you can see, it's very smooth and shiny. No rust or paint remains on this husk of the car here. Additionally, Dad and I built this very simple structure, mostly out of 2x4s. It's essentially a poor man's rotisserie that allowed us to tip this whole body shell up 90 degrees so we can work on the bottom surface here without having it up over our heads where it breaks your neck and your arms. So this is much better, and the reason we really wanted to turn this thing 90 degrees, and I mentioned this briefly, is because we're going to be using a little bit of this in a few strategic locations, and I could hear all of you rolling your eyes and groaning clear across the internet. Now, we'll get to all of that in just a minute, but first, why a 1951 Ford? Well, the short answer is because I didn't learn my lesson the first time. I'm kidding. My dad and I restored my 1936 Ford. It took a number of years and many thousands of dollars and untold hours of work, but I'll tell you, it was super satisfying and of course a lot of fun. You learn so many skills when you revive a car like this, from welding and fabricating to machining, cleaning up and rebuilding transmissions, all of that stuff. It was a great learning experience, and I wanted to do it again, I guess, so that's why I got this 51. It was available pretty close to home here in Michigan, and it was a very reasonable price. Getting extra stainless steel trim, extra window moldings. The brakes, I don't know if you can see this, brakes are a little soft. Just a little bit soft down there. So it wasn't a bad purchase. And I'll tell you, I've always enjoyed these post-war shoebox Fords. They're a very important vehicle in the company's history. They essentially saved the Ford Motor Company after Henry drove the company into the ditch in his declining years. They were not in very good financial shape. But when the 49 Ford came out, it was a landmark product that really saved the company. Though I think the 51 Ford is the most attractive of the bunch. It's got a twin spinner grille up front. It's a bright, cheerful, almost smiling, happy-looking car, and I think they're just a very attractive vehicle. And I'll tell you, I cannot wait to get this thing back on the road because it's a much more sophisticated vehicle. Still has a flathead V8, but it does have independent front suspension. There's an open drive shaft, and of course it has a pair of parallel leaf springs at the rear with a much more conventional axle than what you got on Fords from the 1930s. So overall, this vehicle should be much more refined. It should ride better and handle nicer than the 36. Not that the earlier Fords were bad, but this is really going to be a leap forward. These post-war Fords are like an order of magnitude more complicated than a Ford from the 1930s. Up in the garage attic here, it's stuffed full of parts that I've finished and refurbished and painted and whatever. I've got window garnish moldings, vent windows, inner fender wells, the bumpers, but this car must have 1,000 times more components than the 36 Ford. So this car should be much more sophisticated and enjoyable to drive. Now, professionals may do things a little bit differently, but this process has worked very well for me. So yes, I am using body filler. Can you tell by the dust that is everywhere in this garage? But no, I am not trying to turn the bottom of this car into a Class A surface. That is not the mission. What I am trying to do, however, is make things even and smooth. So if you look right here, this is a replacement floor support. The originals were completely rusted out. So this piece basically welds directly to the floor pan, and when you do that, you end up with a metal thickness difference, a little bit of an offset. And that's where the filler comes in. You wipe that in, you sand it smooth, and now it's all even, there are no sharp edges, and you really can't even tell once it's painted that there was a patch installed here. That's all we're really trying to do, is to make things even and smooth so you don't inadvertently snag yourself on something if you're working on the car, and then you become an inadvertent blood donor. Moving further rearward, same idea right here, another patch. This is where there's a little loop that goes up through the floor where the back seat cushion clips into, and this needed some work as well, so I put a small patch here, welded it in, and put a little bit of body filler just to make things very nice and even. And then perhaps more dramatically right here, the front section of each rear wheel well was severely rusted out. And I don't have the skills or the tools to make this patch panel here all in one piece, so I made it in several different components, welded them in, and then wiped just a small amount of the filler in there to make everything even. And again, once that is painted, you're never going to know that there was even a patch installed there. I think it's going to turn out quite well. And of course, some people don't really care for body filler, and I get it, it's not original, but body filler is very useful. It's incredibly strong as well when you use it appropriately. Just a thin amount in small areas is ideal. You don't want to put 3/4 of an inch of it on your hood or your doors. It's a horrible idea. Don't do that. But Bondo body filler is very useful and quite easy to work with. I did exactly the same thing as well on the 36 Ford, except it needed a lot more filler and sanding because from the riser here forward, I had to replace basically all of the car's floors. They were completely rusted out. It was a lot of work and a lot of welding that needed to be addressed like this, but overall, it turned out extremely well and it's held up just about perfectly. So yes, overall this process is kind of annoying. It does take a fair amount of effort to sand all of that filler down nice, even, and smooth. Plus it makes a ton of dust, so do make sure you are wearing a mask. But I do think overall this is a good thing to do. It adds a sense of craftsmanship to the vehicle and it shows attention to detail because it kind of just smooths everything out. And again, professionals may do things completely differently. Some folks may never use filler on their cars, and that's okay too. Some folks want an absolutely perfect restoration. They want that 32 Ford Roadster exactly as it left the factory, right down to the correct finishes on the nuts and bolts that hold the car together, and that's totally fine. I have major respect for folks that do that kind of work. However, that's not something I want to do. I'm not that interested in it. I want a vehicle that's functional, that I can drive and enjoy and share with friends and take places and really use and not worry about if it's going to rain in 2 weeks that, I might get a little bit of dirt or mud on the chassis or something. That's not my concern at all. I want a car that can be used and enjoyed. I do not want a Fabergé egg that's going to sit on a shelf and look pretty. Plus, a shoebox Ford like this, unfortunately, they're not worth very much money at all. I've already put too much time and effort into this one, but again, it's a hobby. It's something I enjoy doing, so it's not a total loss, but I'm never gonna make as much money as I would with a 32 Roadster or something, so I really don't care that this isn't a factory perfect restoration. And of course, with this channel, we're trying to show how normal people in a fairly normal garage can restore a vehicle to a fairly high level. Your average Joe car guy, or in this case, your average Craig car guy, but never your average Jim. He never gets his hands dirty. Unless, of course, he's making the famous Hall family meatloaf and he's got both of his fists in there. I hear the secret ingredient is fennel. Anyway, that's a very quick update about my latest project car, and of course we'll have many more videos about this thing coming up soon, so make sure you are subscribed to AutoEsoterica. But next, learn about a few of the modifications I made to my 36 Ford. A couple tweaks here or there have dramatically improved the drivability and enjoyment of this old sedan, so click right over here to check that feature out now.